book. They're the 10 steps of successful event planning, and we did that. The first thing we did is we defined the event parameters. What were the parameters?
How many people are attending?
Who's playing?
Who's playing?
NBA.
What?
Oh, wait.
No, it wasn't NBA. What was
Sorry,
it?
the New York Yankees.
It's the New York Yankees. It's a baseball game, right? Is that an indoor event or an outdoor event?
Outdoor.
So what? Yeah. So what do we have to know?
The weather.
Weather. What day of the week? Right? So those were the parameters. The next thing we wanted to do is we wanted to project the logistics of the event. What are the logistics?
Logistics, like the transport of everything, like the arrival of like the inventory and stuff like that. Is that what?
Yes, kind of. That's going to fall more under critical path. Okay? The logistics of the event are, this is why they're coming. I said there's an outside group coming in to see how we handle this, and we want to impress them because we want to bid on their account. Those are logistics. Why is this important to us? How much money do we need to make off of this? Are we doing this for finance, or are we doing it for service? Right.
You make $70,000 or more.
And we want to provide an excellent service to the community and to the patrons that come and so forth and so on. So those would be the logistics. How am I going to make money? Okay? Is there going to be anything that limits me? So for example, I remember last year we talked about Garth Brooks, and the school here had a huge fundraiser on that Thursday night. And anybody worked that event? The chef's event? I know a lot of times you guys do. Were there a lot of people there?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a relative term. There were a lot of people there, but the attendance was 50% of the previous year. Do you know why? The logistics were that Garth Brooks was playing, and all the people that were donors that would typically come to that trivia night or the chef's dinner, I guess it's trivia night, didn't come because they had something that they thought was more important to do. Last night, the Grizzlies are playing. What else is going on? The NCAA Final Four, right? So how many people went to the Grizzlies game? Or they stayed home and watched basketball? Those are logistics that you have to think about. All right. You're going to project the number of people you need, right? So we talked about labor and what kind of people we need. You're going to project the product amount. We practiced that last week. We might practice it again before we leave. We looked at special requirements. Do we have any special requirements in this event?
Yes.
What's the special requirement?
They want to hold something for 50 people at a VIP.
Right.
Special sandwiches for 100 guests prior to the game. Cold canned sodas at both team locker rooms, and then 5 gallons of Gatorade to both teams.
Yes. Good. So that would be the special requirements. Now let's just assume that we work for the Redbird Stadium and we don't have a real strong catering staff and we don't do a lot of this extracurricular stuff that's really polished. But now I've got to put on this VIP tent. What kind of employees would you typically put in there to work the VIP tent?
The best ones.
The best ones? And would that
The
be
strongest ones.
Would that be support personnel?
No.
Why not?
Support personnel is just like an extra set of hands, people that work back at the hospital that don't communicate with people on a daily basis.
Right. Good.
You want employees that know.
So think about the type of employees we have working in this event. Who would we kind of steal or borrow from their department to help us?
Servers or bartenders.
Bartenders, exactly. Because they're a little bit more polished. They know how to talk to people. They know how to present things. Would you put concession workers in there?
No.
Wouldn't. I'm not
If
saying they're
they're
not good,
strong.
okay? And they could be strong.
At your
Would you put the
discretion.
manager in there?
No.
Why?
He needs to be managing.
He needs to be managing, and I can't tell you how many times you have a special event and the manager parks himself in a room like this and manages 50 people while they got 10,000 people out there they need to be taken care of. So you're right. Good managers always can delegate responsibility. Okay? So we talked about labor, we talked about special events, special requirements, then the budget, and we kind of did some measurements to see if what we're planning meets with the budget. The overall budget. We tried to create kind of a critical path. I kind of showed you how to do that. So that's number 7. Now number 8 is follow-up, or it says nag calls. But remember we talked about on Wednesday for that event over there. What are we going to do for the football game on Wednesdays? We're going to call the supplier, Cisco, U.S. Food Service, whoever it is, and say, have you got everything? Are you short anything? Yes, Larry, I've got everything, no problem. Okay, I'm going to call the linen company. You are going to deliver the linens on Friday, right? Because we need to set up before 5 o'clock. Those would be follow-up calls. And then supervising the event itself. And then here's the key thing that I ask everybody to do when they do special events. Create a logbook. When the event is over, write a report. What kind of things would you put in the logbook?
Things that go wrong, things that you
Could improve.
could improve on
Yeah.
for the next event.
I would put down the weather. We thought it was going to be sunny and 75 degrees. It turned out that it was cloudy and 60. I would put in crowd arrived 30 minutes earlier than they normally do. Because at some point, we may want to go back to this, because next year it may be
Bigger.
the Cincinnati Reds coming, or the St. Louis Cardinals coming. In this area, the Cardinals would be big, right? And so we can go back and say, this is what we did right, this is what we did wrong. You could put down, there's a huge traffic jam, and we couldn't get the ice truck in on Friday or Saturday morning. Loomis was 30 minutes late delivering the cash. It threw us behind trying to get everything counted. 2 bankers, tellers, didn't show up in the cash room, so we were short getting the money out. We had to work extra hard. Or everything went as smooth as possible. Per capitas were extremely high. Instead of 70,000 as projected, we did 80,000, about a 12% increase. We attribute that to the fact that people got there early. They bought 2 hot dogs instead of 1. They bought 2 beers as opposed to 1, so forth and so on. So create a logbook. That's the evaluation of the event. If you don't do an evaluation, you're going through the motions. And it would only make sense to me that if you've gone through this much trouble to do this kind of planning, this kind of organizing, this kind of action and execution, that you'd want to at least write down what you did right and what you could do better next time. So, all right. The exam is going to look something like this, okay? So in this particular case, it's an NBA game, right? And it's going to be on a Saturday, and the date is to be determined. Projected weather. Why would that be important for an NBA game? Basketball, indoors or outdoors?
It's
Indoors.
Is it affected by weather?
No.
No.
Well, it could
Is it
be.
affected by weather?
Yes,
How?
because people don't want to travel if it's storming out.
Or snowing or.
Exactly. In the north, they have a lot of problems, like in Detroit and stuff. They have a snowstorm, and the streets are blocked. People can't come. So weather is still, even though it's an indoor event, does have some bearing on the success. Projected attendance, 20,000. Per capita is how much? 850. What are the sales going to be?
$170,000.
170,000. I knew that. All right. Do you know how to fill out this sheet right here? What are you going to do?
Take 60% of
I
170,000.
think it goes right here, right? Well, you could fill that out pretty easily. We kind of done this already, right? Support labor is how much? So if I was going to do that, what I would do is right here, I'd put 2% of what? Yep. And then right here where it says 10% of concession sales, where would I find that?
And look through that.
No? Here's concession sales times 10%. I'd write that number right there. Beer is 20% of 170, or what's that, 34,000 times 10%. I put that number right there, and so forth and so on. Let's do this sheet. Whoop. Man hours forecast. How do we figure man hours forecast?
to do the amount of sales,
Nope.
but you're gonna find,
So whatever those numbers are.
You would take this number right here, the
Yeah.
2% of the 170, and you'd say that much money, right?
Mhm.
And then what are you gonna divide it by?
The hourly rate.
Hourly, and that'll tell you how many people you can schedule. It's the same thing we did right here. The same thing. Says total right here. What's this total gonna look like?
Total number of hours.
Your
Yeah,
number.
so in this particular case, we would take 164 plus 612 plus 52. What's that number? Eight, seven,
828.
828?
yes.
Okay, so you're gonna do something similar right here. And so that number would be 828. You remember how we did this? What do we put up here in the corner? Which is 170,000. And if you remember, what's it say the hot dog sales were? We used 20%. So what you would typically do is put 20% here, times that number, and I'd put the total right there. Okay, so the total sales amount for hot dogs is going to be 20% on one, 34,000? That sound right? And then 60% of the 34,000 goes here. And then we can divide it by the 250. And that would tell us how many hot dogs we need. Right? So on the exam, there'll probably be a question in there like, how many pretzels do you expect to sell? How would you figure that?
Do exactly what you just did.
Do exactly what we just did. You come down here wherever the pretzels were, and there'll be a number in there. So what if the number comes out to be 188.6?
You rounded up,
So what's the number you want to?
189.
Right. You don't want to
You
go
got
there.
down with labor.
Round down with
With
labor.
labor,
round
up with food.
product.
Oh.
Right. Excellent. Good. Anybody have any problems doing any of this? I think this says subtotal of 5%. So maybe if we added up all these subtotals, that would equal 100% at the bottom. So I said 20% to start with. Maybe it's 5 times 170. Any questions? You got this, right?
Right now we do.
I think this is
Down
like-
here, it's liquor. We're not gonna break out gin, vodka, bourbon, scotch, all of those. Liquor's 10%, catering would be 10%. So the total should be 100%. Are we done? I guess we're done. So, how comfortable do you feel doing this?
If you send me a case history with answers, a lot better, so I can practice and see. I'm gonna practice this one, but I want just like another one to practice, if that's possible.
Okay, I'll have to go through my files. If I have one, I'll send it to everybody. I'm sure I do, because I typically, if I'm teaching just theater managers, it's set up for theaters. If I'm teaching just stadium managers, I have one for that kind of activity. If there are people in there with zoos and amusement parks, I kind of move it in that direction. But I'll have to go back and look through my files, see if I can find something that's specific, that's separate.
Any homework?
Pardon me?
Any
No.
homework or anything?
No homework. You have a test. You need to study.
The test is next Friday.
The test is next Friday. We're going to start with this test, and then we're going to go to cost controls, which is the, I think it's chapter 9 in the book.
You're Jen?
Yeah, she just moved to San Diego.
How do you like that? They got out early.
That's